Yes.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. And Steph, I'll turn it over to you.
Yay. Awesome. All right. So welcome everyone to Culture Community. I would love to see, we're so happy to have everybody back, but I would love to see if you want to raise your hand or give us an emoji. Who is the first time coming to Culture Community who's here today? Yay. Oh, we're so happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that we'll see you again in the future. We absolutely love our Culture Community Days. We love our community that we have. A little bit more about who we are. So we are a group of people passionate about being great leaders, intentionally building great cultures, and of course, community. So really, this is a space to learn and develop and grow and to connect with each other and ultimately to be inspired and activated to make positive change in the world. So when and where we meet monthly, and our next event is on January 26th. It's going to be on Zoom, and it's going to be with the amazing Leah Rowe. She is going to talk with us about trusting yourself and transforming your leadership. And what we talk about, we cover topics that really help us become better leaders, help us build better cultures. So if that's really what you're looking to do, make sure that you check us out every month. And none of this would be possible without our amazing sponsors, which are DreamBank and The Perk. And so I'm going to toss it over to Megan from DreamBank so she can tell us a little bit about what they've got going on.
Thank you for that, Steph. And I just want to give a plug for next month's with Leah Rowe. Leah, you were one of our first DreamBank virtual events we hosted in 2020. It had been like March or April, and it was just an incredible event. You've been back many times since, but it's going to be a really, really good one. But a little bit about DreamBank, if any of you have not heard of us, we are truly a space for dreamers. We are a virtual event experience that is presented by American Family Insurance to truly help give you those resources, tools, support, inspiration that you need to make those dreams that you have a reality. We do this through our free event series. We offer loads of different varieties of events, from things for your kiddos, like the ones that I host, to things all the way up to business resources and meditations, and anything kind of in between for it. So truly, we have different social media platforms. We hope to open our doors early in 2023 for people to come back to DreamBank. We don't have our date released quite yet, but we have a really good event today. If it's starting today at noon Central, if any of you are interested in going from an incredible culture community to then making some incredible actions and resolutions for the new year. So this is going to kick off at noon. It's going to give you all those tangible steps to like set you up these next couple of weeks while we're still finishing up 2022 to set those intentions for the new year. I will send the link to sign up. It's a free sign up. It will just give you the registration and the information to join it. So thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Perk.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. We're so excited for you all to open your doors. I know that you did a little remodeling too, so we just cannot wait to get back in the space. That's so exciting. And then I will hand it over to Leah, who's going to talk to us about The Perk.
Hi, everyone. Who's excited to be here today? Woo! Culture Community Day. Yay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us at The Perk. So at The Perk, we are a premier leadership and team coaching, training, and development studio. So we really focus on one-on-one coaching, team workshops, custom leadership development programs, all of that fun stuff. And today I just wanted to talk a little bit about coaching. And so coaching is all about change. We always say if everything in your life is perfect, if everything in your career is perfect, you feel really, really good, amazing. Like, let us celebrate you, but that's not when you hire a coach. So you hire a coach when you want something to be different in your life or in your leadership. So maybe you want more or less of something. You want more joy or less stress. You have goals you want to achieve. You want clarity on what's next for you. Some of my clients are like, I don't have any goals, but I know I want something different. So I need help in figuring out what goals I want to set and start going after. Or maybe you feel stuck and you want movement. Maybe things are good, but you're like, I'm ready to take things to the next level. I want to turn it up a notch. That's a great time to start thinking about hiring a coach. So I just wanted to give kind of an example of the kind of coaching that we do. So a lot of leaders that come to us for one-on-one coaching or team coaching, they come to us and they kind of look like this. They're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, they feel like things are just totally out of their control. Life is just happening to them. And through our coaching, we take them to this. They're clear, they're confident, and they're fulfilled. So, and I just wanted to share, this was a feedback, a testimonial quote we got in this past week. And I was just like, this just like hits home for me. So the quote was, it was after they finished this coaching program, they said, not only do I feel incredibly confident as a leader, I'm also now able to read my son a bedtime story without feeling distracted and overwhelmed. And that was just like this. I could not picture a better testimonial for the coaching work that we do, because we really focus on who people are as whole humans. It's not just who you are as a leader. It's not just who you are as an employee. It is you as a human in your entire life. So I just thought that this was, just brings, tears to my eyes, and my heart is just on fire. So if you have anything in your life, you're like, I want something to be different. I want more or less of something. I'm feeling stuck. I want clarity. I want more confidence or fulfillment. Feel free to reach out. It's a new year. It's a great time to get coached and get after it. So thanks. And I'll turn it back over to you, Steph.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Okay, so what we are all here for today is Leading with Emotional Intelligence with Emily Smith. So Emily, of course, gave me a bio for me to read for her today to introduce her, but I'm not going to read the bio that she gave, because I just think that Emily is so amazing, and I'm going to tell you why I think she's amazing in her intro. So Emily, she is a leadership coach and a culture consultant here with us at the Perk. She has set some huge goals for herself this year, and we are now in December, and Emily has crushed every single one of them. Like, not only did she achieve her goals, she has absolutely gone above and beyond in achieving these goals. And one of them was to be able to present on this topic on emotional intelligence to our clients, to you all. And so I am just so excited for her to be able to teach us today, for us to be able to learn from her. If you've had the wonderful experience of getting to know Emily or having a conversation with Emily, you know that she is one of just the most genuinely sweet and honestly nicest people that I've ever met. And so I'm just so honored to have her on our team. I'm honored to have her as part of this community that we've built. And I just think that you're all going to get really, really great things out of her speaking with us today and leading us today. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Emily to teach us about emotional intelligence.
Thanks, Steph. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. I love how you're like, this is what I wrote. So not everybody here is like, I'm going to put this together for me to read today. All right, let me share my screen. All right, I am so excited to be here with all of you and talk a little bit about leading with emotional intelligence. For those of you who have been part of Culture Community before, this may be a reminder, but for those of you who are new, this is interactive. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat, unmute yourself and ask them out loud. I would love to answer the questions throughout the presentation and have this be a conversation. Also, my incredible team is monitoring the chat, and so we'll get those questions answered for you. So we talked a little bit about this already, but at the Perk, we love some confetti. So we asked this question at the beginning, what are you celebrating today? I'd love to hear, looking back in the last year, what is one thing you're celebrating from 2022? You have accomplished so many things in the last 12 months, and I would love to hear it. I would love to throw some confetti for you today. So throw it in the chat, unmute yourself. What's coming up for you right now?
Okay, Emily, I'll unmute myself for you.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. I launched my own business this year, which was a big thing, but I finally got my first public workshop going. So it's gonna be January 18th, but I have time to prepare still, but I got it off the ground. I did it.
Amazing. Oh, that is so exciting, Diana. Thanks for sharing. We have some stuff coming in the chat. So promotions, moving from a job. Oh my gosh, this is super, super exciting. So many big things happening this year. That is awesome. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to dive into what is emotional intelligence, really define it. Then we're going to talk a little bit about why it's so important. Why are we even talking about it today? Then we're going to break it down into the 4 dimensions that make up emotional intelligence. And lastly, we are going to end with some tips for strengthening each dimension. And I already previewed this earlier, but we're also here for this. We're also here to learn, to grow, and to connect with one another. This is such a wonderful space to ask questions, to learn from other amazing leaders who are all passionate about this space and these types of topics. So what is emotional intelligence? There are so many definitions out there, but I really like this one. I feel like it describes it really well. Emotional intelligence, otherwise known as emotional quotient or EQ, as you'll hear me talk about today, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, to communicate effectively with others, to empathize well with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Now, even though I love this definition, it is a mouthful. It is a lot. So to break it down, emotional intelligence is your ability to understand and manage your emotions and the emotions of others. So your emotions are so powerful. And on one end of the spectrum, there are some people who are really in tune with their emotions, and they let their emotions drive their daily interactions, the decisions they're making, and it's easy to get very overwhelmed when you do that. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, there are some people who kind of ignore their emotions and push them off into the corner. And at that point, you're missing signals that your emotions and your feelings are trying to tell you. And I like to think of this as a robot that has task, 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 and you're like, complete, 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 but you're not listening to any of the other things that your body and your emotions are trying to tell you. And neither one of these extremes are very effective in the long run if this is all that you do. So that's what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is how we tune into what we're experiencing, how we read what our emotions and our feelings are trying to tell us. And we use that as data to make effective decisions and take productive actions. So what does this look like? Some leaders with high emotional intelligence, what are you seeing from these leaders? Common behaviors that leaders with high emotional intelligence have are they're very empathetic to those around them. They're aware of their own strengths and weaknesses. They know what they do really well and they incorporate that into their job. And they're also very aware of what they might not be so great at, and they form a team around them to help level them up. They're very self-motivated and they embrace change. They're looking for progress, not perfection. They're always excited about finding a new way to do things. They're very curious. They ask lots of questions because they want to learn from those around them. And when they ask those questions, then they are good listeners. They take the time to truly listen to what the other people are saying around them. If we're going to talk about what emotional intelligence is, I think it's really important to discuss what I am not talking about. Emotional intelligence does not mean that you can't have bad days and that you always have to be nice and in a good mood. It doesn't mean that you can't have feelings about situations. It doesn't mean you're perfect and always have your emotions in check. And it doesn't mean you can't have emotional outbursts. So many times when we do this presentation, we ask people to think about somebody in their life who is emotionally intelligent, and they go, ooh, my boss is really emotionally intelligent, but you know what? Last week I gave them some feedback and they didn't receive it very well, so they must not be. And that's not what we're saying at all. You use emotional intelligence in all of these situations to help you. So one more time for good measure, having high emotional intelligence does not mean that you have to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. We all have days where we make a decision based on emotion instead of logic and data. We have emotional outbursts, or we don't feel motivated and we react poorly to constructive feedback. This does not mean that you have a low emotional intelligence. It may mean you have reacted with low emotional intelligence, but you use that emotional intelligence in your awareness to help you in all of these situations. So now I'm going to ask you this question. I want you all to think of a personal example. It is great to talk about this at high level and all these behaviors, but really bring it home. Who is somebody in your life, personally or professionally, that you believe has high emotional intelligence? And once you think of this person, I want you to think, what are the behaviors that this person exhibits that tells you they have high emotional intelligence? And just as a reminder, these are some of the ones that we had listed on a slide earlier to kind of kickstart those ideas. So again, I would love for you to unmute or throw it in the chat. What are some of these behaviors that tells you that this person has high emotional intelligence?
So when you posed this question just now, I had like a little Rolodex of different people that I work with and live with. And I was surprised that the most emotionally intelligent person I could think of was my husband, who has a PhD in experimental physics. So you wouldn't necessarily expect that from someone like that. But he is like, since the moment I met him, he's a really good listener. He doesn't get really upset about things very often. I mean, every once in a while he loses his cool, but it's super rare. And he's more of a, like, he'll listen and he'll be empathetic. Most of the time he doesn't try to solve my problems unless asked, although, you know, it's sort of natural to do that. But he's just like, you always feel okay telling him anything. I don't have to worry about him judging me, and he listens. And so, yeah, he's just great. And he can't hear me right now, which is good because I don't think he's ever heard this, but I was surprised, honestly.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
I think another thing too that I would kind of wrap some of that up into is people that go out of their way to develop rapport in one-on-one conversations. Because I think in order to develop rapport, you need to have a lot of these.
Yeah, 100%. What else?
I see the good listener on there, and I would say that somebody who has high EQ is an active listener, right? Like they're really engaged in the conversation, and they are able most of the time anyway to kind of pivot based on the situation and what they're, what they're getting from the other person. They have good intuition is what it seems like, where actually it's a skill you can build.
Yes, love that.
I think off of that too, Christine, is that they're a good listener, but later on down the road, they remember and check in on you about what you've talked about.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That follow-up makes it feel genuine.
Yeah, building on those relationships. And I know that there's been a ton more coming in from the chat, which I absolutely love. So tons of awareness, patience. Yes, that's a huge one. Understanding. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. These are all such amazing behaviors that we see in people who have high emotional intelligence. So why is it important? We totally understand what it is now. We have these ideas of people in our head that we work with and we live with that have high emotional intelligence, but why is it so important to have it? So we're going to talk with some statistics in this section. So leaders with empathy perform over 40% higher in employee engagement, decision-making, and coaching. I would love to see, raise your hand if employee engagement, decision-making, and coaching, any one of these is part of your job. I'll like look down over here. Yeah. So a way to raise this awareness, this employee engagement, decision-making, coaching, focusing on your empathy, which is a huge behavior of somebody with high emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has a 58% influence on job performance. And my favorite statistic, people with high emotional intelligence make an average of $29,000 more per year than people with low EQ. So what does this mean? If you are on this call today and you think you have high emotional intelligence, once we get off, I want you to go to your boss and ask for a $29,000 raise. Tell them Emily sent you. So emotional intelligence accounts for nearly 90% of what sets high performers apart from their peers with similar technical skills and knowledge. So this means if you have two people on your team that have similar education, they have similar years of experience and similar training and development, but they perform very differently, it is probably attributed to their level of emotional intelligence. And people like working for managers and with other people that have high emotional intelligence. Workers who have managers with high EQ scores are 4 times less likely to quit than those with managers who have low EQ scores. We have all heard the phrase that people leave managers or leaders, they don't leave jobs. And this is a huge problem that we're dealing with right now. Not only is it an issue that we're trying to all solve, but it's also expensive. On average, it takes 6 to 9 months salary to find a replacement. So for an example, if a person in your organization who made about $40,000 leaves, it's going to take anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 of hiring and onboarding costs to get somebody new in the door. Not only is it expensive, it also takes a lot of time. It usually takes between 8 to 12 weeks to replace a knowledge worker. And then once you get them into their job, it takes another 4 to 8 weeks before they get to a full productivity mode. So how do we prevent this? How do we stop putting money into this and time into this? We take a step back and we focus on our own emotional intelligence. How do we lead a team with emotional intelligence, create spaces that other people want to be a part of, that they want to contribute towards and are excited to be a part of? That is what we're creating awareness around today. So I know by this point you're bought in. You're like, yep, Emily, I know what emotional intelligence is. I understand why it's important. Let's talk about it. How do we break it down? How do we do it? Before we jump into those 4 dimensions, I want to take one step back. I want to acknowledge that everyone is growing with their emotional intelligence. There is no winner of emotional intelligence or a prize that we are handing out at the end of this presentation when you score 100% on the emotional intelligence assessment. We like to say this comes from Michelle Venturini, who has also spoken at Culture Community. Everyone has something to learn and everyone has something to teach. So I know today I am going to learn from you, and hopefully you learn 1 or 2 things from me today. So today is becoming aware of your emotional intelligence, understanding where you're at with it, where you can grow with it, and not making any judgments about it. So this is the framework that we are going to use to break down emotional intelligence. This comes to us from TTI Success Insights, which is the company that we are certified through to do emotional intelligence assessments. So on this graph, on the left-hand side, you have yourself, focusing on your own emotions and how you regulate that. On the other side, you have social, so focusing on other people. Then on the bottom, we have awareness, and the top is regulation. And this breaks down into the 4 dimensions that we're going to dive into, which is self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and social regulation. So to help us understand this framework a little bit better, I'm going to tell you a story. So get cozied up under a blanket. Feel free to, you can close your eyes. You don't have to remember any of the details specifically, but just listen to the sound of my voice and just hear this or listen to the story. So you walk in the door of your office. Today is a big day. This morning you have a meeting where you get to present the project you and your team have been working really hard on for the past 2 months. Your boss will be there, and after today you get to move on to the next phase of the plan. You are really excited about the conversation and a little anxious. So because you already feel jittery, you decide to grab tea instead of coffee in the kitchen. Then you choose to sit in your office for a few minutes by yourself, just deep breathing and preparing for the conversation. You are going to crush it. Then it's time for the meeting. Everyone gets to the conference room and you kick off the presentation. 5 minutes into your talk, Jeff, one of your teammates, walks into the room. He apologizes for being late and then starts talking about how the line at the coffee shop was so long and they ran out of his normal breakfast, so he had to change things up, and goes on and on. Another one of your teammates, Sam, notices you getting really frustrated and politely says, "All right, everyone, let's turn back to the PowerPoint." Once everyone quiets back down, you dive back into your slides. After a little bit, you ask Sam to come up and talk about pivot tables she created for your presentation. You know she is much better at Excel, and she'll be able to explain the information better. You finish sharing your ideas, your presentation comes to an end, and you turn to the rest of the room to see their reaction. The first words out of your boss's mouth are, "We have already done this before. This won't work with our company, and rolling it out would be a tremendous waste of time." Sam slams her fist on the table. She is furious because she has spent days working on these calculations and feels it would be a really impactful way to gain new business with your clients. She looks straight at your boss and says, "You have no idea what you're talking about. If you worked with our clients at all, you would understand how helpful this could be." This is not at all how you thought the presentation would go and how your boss would react. You're really upset at how the meeting is going, so you place your head in your hands. Jeff notices, he reaches over, put his hands on your arm and says, "Hey, don't worry about it. This is a great plan, and I have a few ideas about how we can bring in my friend from customer relations to help us. Your boss chimes back in and says, I know this will never work. Did you do any research before you started this project? Maybe do a survey with our clients and ask them what services they want to see us offer. Jeff adds to the boss's idea by saying, ooh, yes, that's a great idea. You should also design a postcard mailer to let our clients know we want their feedback. He turns to you and continues, I know graphic design isn't something you enjoy doing, so maybe you could reach out to the marketing director to help you. You reply by saying, yeah, I couldn't do our client survey because no one showed me where our client emails are in our system. And the mailer didn't go out either because I thought marketing seemed really busy and I didn't think they wanted to help with this project. Your boss wraps up the conversation with, Jeff, love the mailer idea. Let's get a meeting scheduled later this week with marketing department to move the project along. All right. Maybe during parts of the story you resonated with you in certain situations that you've had in your own office. But we are going to use this story to help us break down emotional intelligence. This story is filled with examples of both really high emotional intelligence and low emotional intelligence. So let's break it down. The first dimension of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And self-awareness is your ability to recognize and understand your moods, emotions, and drives. And self-awareness in research is the foundational skill that all other emotional intelligence dimensions build off of. In our research, self-awareness has been studied as the most important capability for leaders to develop. Because it's so important, I have some statistics to go around it. 95% of people think that they are self-aware, but only about 15% actually are. And I love this one. 99% of working American adults report working with at least one person who is not self-aware. So going off of the statistic, I'm going to assume that a lot of you in the room have a name or two floating around in your head of somebody who is probably not self-aware. So where do we see it in our story? We saw really high self-awareness when you asked your teammate Sam to present on the pivot tables for your presentation. You were aware that she had more of a strength in Excel and pivot tables than you did, and that she would do a better job explaining it to the group and they would understand it better. Low self-awareness is at the end of the story when you made excuses for not trying the ideas that others in the room were suggesting. Why is this so important? It's so important to have high self-awareness because it helps you tune in to what you're experiencing throughout the day. And not only what you're experiencing, but why you're experiencing it. It helps you know your own strengths and your weaknesses. It helps you create and hold space for feedback from others. And when they offer that feedback, it helps you receive that information well. Bottom line, it helps you feel your feelings. Feelings are meant to be felt. So many times when we work with leaders and managers, they are like, all right, you know what? I'm going to push my feelings off to the side. I just want to get to action, 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 action. But you're supposed to feel your feelings, and that's going to drive the actions that you should take. So checking in with your self-awareness, ask yourself, what am I experiencing in this moment? And what is causing me to feel this way? I am going to put a member or a team member of mine on the spotlight. So my boss, Leah, has really high self-awareness. And Leah's busy. She's running a company. She has 2 young girls at home. She's very involved. She has a lot going on. And like many of us, she has a long to-do list every day. And at the end of each day, she was working long hours, crossing a lot off, but she always had stuff that she didn't get to and got moved on to the next day. So time after time, she was seeing at the end of the day, she was looking at this to-do list and she kind of just had a pit in her stomach. And why? She worked long hours, she got a lot done, she moved the company forward, but why was she feeling this way? So she took the time to get curious about it. She acknowledged what she was experiencing, this pit in the bottom of her stomach at the end of each day, and she got curious about what was causing her to feel that way. After some journaling and taking time to reflect on it, she realized that she felt like she was procrastinating. She was pushing off these tasks and she wasn't getting to them. And she didn't like that. She didn't like that word and the feeling that she had around that. So if you ask her about this story, she will tell you that she now loves procrastination. She thinks that she changed her mindset and everything is supposed to happen when it's happening. And that is what brings us to our next dimension, which is self-regulation. Once you become aware of what you're experiencing and what is causing you to feel that way, what's something you could do about it? So self-regulation is your ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods. Before I dive more into self-regulation, I just want to take a moment to pause. What's coming up for people? What questions are coming up for people right now? All right. If there's no questions, then we'll keep on learning. So self-regulation is all about how do I get to an emotionally clear state faster? I live in Wisconsin, and I know many people on the call live in Wisconsin as well. And we have this super fun thing where we have all 4 seasons. And so we get to experience a lot of different weather. So I'm sure you can all picture this. In the middle of summer, it's 100 degrees out and you're leaving your office, you're walking out to your car and you get in your car, you close the door. And if you sit in your car for 5 minutes and do nothing, you'll be a nice medium well because your car will cook you to that temperature. So what do? You try to get your heat back down. You turn on your AC, you roll down the windows, you do anything you can to kind of equal out that temperature in your car. In the wintertime, it's the same thing. You walk out to your car and it's freezing, so you do everything you can to get it warmer. You turn on the heater, you turn on your steering wheel heater and your seat heater, anything you can to turn up the heat. And that's what getting to an emotionally clear state faster means. When you're experiencing really high emotions or really low emotions, what are things that you can do to bring you back to that equilibrium or that emotionally clear state? I also like to know that this is the dimension where most people score lowest with their emotional intelligence. It is very hard to, once you're aware of what you're feeling, actually regulate that and not let it spill over into other meetings or conversations or projects that you're working on throughout the day. So in our story, we saw really high self-regulation in the morning when you chose to drink tea instead of coffee. You recognized that you were feeling anxious and that you didn't want to add more caffeine to your system, so you switched what your normal routine is. Then you went to your office to take a few deep breaths to prepare for your meeting. This is how you regulated those emotions that you were feeling. For low self-regulation, this is when Sam, your teammate, responds to your boss and slams her fist down on the conference table. She's really frustrated with your boss's response. She was not able to regulate those emotions, and it comes out in frustration as she slams her fists. And self-regulation is so important because it helps you act on logic, experience, instinct, instead of emotions. I am not saying to cut out emotions completely, but I'm saying that this gives you a tool that when you need to act on logic, experience, and instinct, that you are able to do so. It helps you be able to control your emotions and not let them spill into other situations where it could potentially be unhelpful. It also helps you be more productive because you know what you need to do to return to an emotionally clear state so you can be at your best self as you move on throughout your day. And it also helps you with conflict resolution. It helps you regulate what you're feeling so you can enter a potentially emotionally charged conversation with a clear headspace and an outsider perspective. So checking in with your self-regulation, ask yourself, what should I do about what I'm experiencing? And how can I appropriately express what I'm feeling? A story I like to note about self-regulation is we have a client who has extremely high self-regulation, which is great. But because they have high self-regulation, they regulate their emotions so well that their team sometimes feels that they don't care. But the truth of the matter is that they care deeply about the work that they're doing, the impact that they have, the clients that they're working with. They care a lot. So when I tell the story, because if this resonates with you, if you are somebody that has really high self-regulation and you regulate your emotions really well, I encourage you to, one, just be aware of this and maybe even prompt you to have a conversation with your team about how you regulate your emotions and how it may come across to those that you're working with. So now let's flip the script a little bit. We're going to talk about other people now. So this is social awareness. This is your ability to understand the emotional makeup of others and how your words and actions affect others and those around you. In our story, we saw high social awareness when your teammate Sam, your other teammate Jeff walked into the room late and is talking about his breakfast, and Sam notices you getting upset and she's like, all right, let's get back to the conversation. She was able to read the room and read your nonverbals and be able to direct the attention back to your presentation. Low social awareness was when Jeff walked into the room. He was not able to read your nonverbals and starts talking about his breakfast, starts really talking about the long line and how he had to change things up, and doesn't comprehend that this is something that's important that you've been working really hard on and how he may be disrupting that. So having high social awareness means that you are able to sense pain in others and allows you to take steps to alleviate it. It means that you can show regard for other people's feelings, their wishes, their rights. And this skill is so you can read a room and adjust accordingly, like your teammate Sam did in the story. It also allows you to read others' body language and use that as data. I want to take a moment here because why is having high social awareness so important with either leading a team or interacting with a team? Reading some of these things on the screen. I'd love to hear from your perspective.
I think the biggest thing is that it allows you to feel where somebody else is rather than just assuming where somebody is based on what they're telling you. And I think that's also been one of the biggest challenges about working remotely and having digital meetings is it's much harder to get a sense of that. And it's much harder to read the room when it's only on Zoom and you can only see a face of somebody in front of you. And I think a lot of people have been really good at putting on their best Zoom face, and I think a lot of people try to mask maybe things that they're feeling. So I think taking the extra step of really having that rapport with somebody at the beginning of a conversation before you dive into the nitty-gritty helps a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. Virtual meetings and work have thrown a whole new element into this. Yeah.
So Emily, I used to work at a job where during all staff meetings, it was my job to sit kind of facing the audience and just observe people's social responses to what was being said so that we could kind of pinpoint if there was anyone who needed additional support in a topic or things like that. So I think it's just super important for it's hard to be consciously aware of everyone's reactions, but the more you can provide assistance or control the situation.
Yeah.
Or manage the situation.
How helpful was that for you to do that during those meetings?
I think it was good. I think especially during large announcements where it was major change, just to see who was excited, who was most nervous about it. And then you could kind of follow up with them and encourage them in ways that they might need. So it was also very interesting, just from a social dynamics to be observant of people in that way.
I'm sure.
I think that's a really good point too. You said you follow up with people. And what I've really tried to do is if I'm in a Zoom meeting and there's multiple people and somebody who's normally really talkative is suddenly super quiet on the meeting, I might check in with them later because it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to share what's going on, but you might just want to check in with them because you're getting clues that something might be a little off.
I'm a project manager and I run a lot of meetings and I'm also an extrovert. So I'll often ask one of my introverted project team members to pay attention during meetings or afterwards. I'll ask, can you tell me what happened during that meeting that I was running? And then I'll follow up afterwards with any people that they noticed were uncomfortable or looked like they needed some more support.
Amazing.
When I think of social awareness too, a lot of times when working with clients, you'll see the word that's coming up is steamrolling, where it's let's just stick to business. And you're not taking in clearly the other person's upset or struggling with something. And that causes the employee to feel not seen, not heard, not valued. It's almost like when you're in pain about something, you want people to see you and notice that something is going on. And if people are just business, it's just I don't know, it just breaks that feeling of belonging.
But yeah, I think that's also super important with comprehension. Sometimes you're steamrolling people and they just don't get it. And they're not with you. And there's visible signs that they're not comprehending to the level you need them to. And they're not comfortable asking because you continue to steamroll.
And then it just snowballs, right? Because they're feeling not heard. And then they're thinking about how they're not heard and they're feeling upset. And yeah, no one's absorbing the information you want them to absorb anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Nick, it
Nick-
looks like you have your hand raised. Did you have a question or something to say?
Oh, I just wanted to follow up on that. And like, I think this is like a skill, like I have trouble communicating. It's like, I think oftentimes, because we have like a hybrid, like work from home and remote work, mainly just because there's like in-person activities that like we just need to do to like operate and just achieve our goals for success. But sometimes I feel like in social awareness, the people who are the most vocal about certain aspects of the job, like working, one of the big subjects we have is working, when to be in the office and when not to be. We often listen and try to have this complicated model that supports everyone. And then there's like a big deal of silence. And it's just like, a lot, sometimes it's like, I get the cue that the silence from people, from our employees. It's just that I get what you're trying to do. You're doing a little too much. This is overwhelming me. Can you just chill out a bit? And so like, I think like that is something, it's just like, how do you better like practice those things? Because like not everyone wants to speak out because they just like, I'm not trying to complain. I'm just trying to do my job and go home and live my life.
Well, you
Yeah.
also have to have a safe work environment, right, Nick? Like if people don't feel safe to speak up, even if they're feeling it and seeing it, they still won't say something. So it definitely goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, you brought up a great point when you were saying like just hearing what others are communicating to you. Sometimes that's silence. Sometimes it's nothing. It's being aware of that. So how to check in with your self-awareness? Asking yourself, do I have my antenna up to catch the signals that other people are giving off? It's not even what are you going to do about it or what actions are you going to take? It's just saying, am I catching the signals other people are giving off? That is social awareness. Bring in one of my other lovely teammates, Steph. She has extremely high social awareness. So we call Steph the human highlighter. As you saw in the this morning, she is so great about bringing people up, just recognizing what other people need, just bringing so much joy and light into all the interactions and conversations that she has. But to do that, she has to be aware of what that other person needs. She has to catch those signals that other people are giving off. So many times we're in a conversation with a client and somebody is talking about a project they're completing. And they're like, yeah, we got it done. We got it out the door. It was good. And she's like, what was that sigh for? Or what was that pause for? Just recognizing, catching all those things that our client was communicating, but might not necessarily been saying. So, do I have my antenna up to catch the signals that other people are giving off? And that goes into social regulation. So now we're influencing others. This is your ability to influence the emotional clarity of others through managing relationships and building networks. So high social regulation. In our story, when you're really upset about how your boss reacted, this was not how you thought the conversation was going to go. You put your head in your hands. He recognized that you were frustrated and saw that. And then he influenced it with social regulation. He put his hand on your arm and says, hey, I have some ideas of my own. I have some people we can bring in to make this idea even better. Low social regulation, this was your boss's response to your presentation. They did not care about how their response was you were going to take their response. They just wanted to make sure that what they had in their mind was heard by the rest of the room. They had no care about how they were perceived. They were like, this is not going to work, move on to the next thing. And it's so important to have high social regulation because this helps you collaborate well with others. It helps you know what they're passionate about, what their goals are, what they want out of the conversation or the project, and how you can influence that. It helps you be proficient in communication skills to help influence others, manage conflict better because you know where people are coming from, and helps you be an influential figure in somebody else's life. So checking with your social regulation is asking yourself, how can I leave the situation better than I found it? It's as simple as that. How can I leave this situation 1% better? A quick story I want to share about social regulation is I got married in August and I used a lot of social regulation during the planning process. My husband said very early on that his 3 goals for our wedding was for it to be stress-free, within the budget, and for us to have fun. So then we started reaching out to vendors. We were getting quotes to come in, and let me tell you, it was not stress-free, it was not fun, and it was mostly never in budget. So what did I do? When our caterer came in when our photographer came in and her quote was more than we had planned for, the conversation that we had was, all right, you know what? The photographer was more than we wanted, but our caterer was under budget. So we are still within that goal that we had for being in budget here. When we started finding an event planner for our wedding, and I found somebody that I absolutely loved. She totally got our style. She's going to make our day stress-free, reach out to all of our vendors. But again, she was a little over budget. The conversation that we had was, all right, let's have drinks with her. Let's learn a little bit more about her and her style, and let's see if this is a good fit. Well, by the end of drinks, my husband was like, yes, she is our person. She is completely in line with what we want for our wedding, and she is going to help us hit our goal of not having to stress about anything the day of. And we didn't have to worry about one thing the day of our wedding. And lastly, when we were trying to plan our rehearsal dinner, and again, we realized it was going to be bigger and more expensive than we had wanted, I suggested, how about let's do our rehearsal dinner at X Golf, an indoor golf simulator place. This is one of my husband's favorite activities. So having fun with his friends playing golf, it was a lot easier to have this bigger group than we had anticipated and spend a little bit more money because we were having fun doing it. These conversations went so much smoother than me just lying out all of these quotes saying, all right, we're spending a lot more money than we wanted. This sucks. So knowing how to bring in what he wanted, what goals he had, what he was passionate about for this quote unquote project that we were doing or our wedding, it helped these conversations go so much better. So here is our framework for emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, social regulation. And we're going to call this our cheat sheet. So those questions that you can ask yourself to check in with each of these dimensions. We'll send this out in the follow-up email so you can have this to reference and kind of check in with your emotional intelligence throughout the day. So now let's quickly talk about tips for strengthening each of these dimensions. What are some things that you can do? 1, self-awareness. Create a feedback loop for your team and incorporate these into one-on-ones or annual reviews or any time that you have a space to really dive into a little bit more of a personal conversation with somebody. Ask the other person, what is something I should keep doing, start doing, and stop doing? And then when they offer their feedback, thank them for it and truly reflect on it. That is going to be the next step that truly makes impact here. 2, be aware of your own strengths and weaknesses. Ask yourself, what do I do best? And write out your answer. What do I do best? And bonus, ask somebody that you trust to share what they think your strengths and weaknesses are. See where there's some alignment, see where there's some gaps, see where you need to get a little bit more curious. Self-regulation. Implement a rule. If meetings get heated, we take a 5-minute break and we come back to the conversation. I am sure that everybody here has been on a meeting where somebody gets frustrated or even you get frustrated and then you shut down. Innovation stops, productivity comes to a halt. Our time is so valuable. And when that happens in a meeting space, you are wasting time in your day and it's precious time that you can't get back. So implementing this rule that anybody can call a 5-minute break to kind of step away from the meeting, decompress a little bit, reflect just a little bit, and then come back to make sure this time together is a productive conversation. Write down a list of your top 5 favorite ways to get yourself back into an emotionally clear state. Whether this is grabbing a coffee from the coffee shop down the street or just going for a 5-minute walk, little things that you can do to really help yourself get to that emotionally clear state. So those days where you feel or have extreme feelings, you can reference this quickly and be able to do that. Social awareness. Assume positive intent. This may seem simple, but come to every conversation you have assuming that people are kind, fair, trying their best with the information they have possible. Shifting your mindset with this is going to make a huge impact on all the conversations that you have. Assume positive intent and challenge your team members. When they come to you with an issue or a problem, say, are you assuming positive intent here? picking up on those signals that other people are giving off. And 2, asking powerful questions. So powerful questions are questions that start with the word what, focusing on those what questions. These questions tend to be more expansive and helps you create safety and build trust with your team. So for an example, if somebody brings a project to you and you're looking at it, you're like, yep, I'm so curious, why did you do the project this way? Immediately, their response is going to be trying to defend why they decided to do the project this way. If you are looking and you're like, yep, okay, I'm so curious, what was your thought process behind doing the project this way? Just shifting how you started that question, their response is now going to be just explaining why they did the project this way instead of defending the answer or the answer that they have. And last, social regulation, celebrate each other. You had to know that celebration was going to be in here because we love celebration. We started with celebrate, so we're going to end with it. So ask your team how they like to be celebrated. Everybody likes to be celebrated in different ways, and make sure that you're meeting people where they're at. Also, remember to celebrate the small steps and the big accomplishments, not just the big accomplishments at the end of the year, but the small steps that your team took to get there. And lastly, set goals together as a team. Invite other people to offer their opinions, their goals that they have, things that they're passionate about. Because when you know what they care about, then you can align everything you're doing to that. So you invite everybody to contribute, and they are part of the goal setting process. They are excited to contribute to this together. I want you to reflect on these 4 questions. So the first one I have is, which one of these dimensions are you best at? Which one are you personally best at? And next, which one do you want to work on? Which one do you see some opportunity for growth? Now let's focus on your team. Which one is your team best at? Self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, or social regulation? And the last question, which one, if mastered, would have the greatest impact on your team? This last question, I would love to hear people's responses. Throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. Which one, if mastered, would have the greatest impact on your team? I'd love to hear.
I think social awareness.
Yeah. What else?
Emily, one thing that really comes up for me or struck me is on self-regulation. And I think it takes a bit of internal personal work to know how you need to return back, how you need to settle your internal life. And because it's not just one thing, it might be, depending on the situation, what calms you or brings you back in one situation may not be as useful in the situation that you're in. So I think about that, and then creating permission for yourself and within your team to go and do it. I think so often when we're in a amygdala hijack, it feels so urgent and that this needs to be fixed right now, and just giving yourself a moment to be like, yeah, no, this is okay. We're not performing surgery here. We can step away. It's actually so important that we need to take a break and come back, and I need to go take care of myself by this way. So that's what came up for me in your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, I love that.
I think for me, that's really, my brain started spinning when you started asking these, because I realized I have a unique situation where I work many different jobs. And so I work with a lot of different personalities, and it's kind of putting on a different hat every time you work with a different project. So I think that the thing that's been the most helpful for me is for me to be as authentic and as upfront and open about myself and my needs as I can be, so that everyone else I don't have to adjust myself for every different project that I'm working on. Everybody knows what they're getting when they talk to me. So I think that that's been, and this, I'm sure this also applies to your work family is going to be different than your actual family. And so, you have to recognize everybody's different awarenesses as well. So it's kind of an interesting that there's sometimes so many different layers to all the different people you work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Emily, something that was coming up that it just like kind of clicked for me as you're presenting is that like, is social awareness can't happen if you're distracted. So like the need to like eliminate distractions and really be present with the people you're with. Otherwise you can't, your antenna, like you can't have your antenna up. And so I just think like that's a really good just kind of thing for us to think about as people and as leaders, is that even I was just thinking about with like my kids, you know, of being off my phone because I can't have social awareness if I am distracted. So really being focused and present.
Absolutely. I love how you brought it into personally and professionally. It's the same. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I appreciate that, Leah. And I think that there's some, cultures, work cultures that I've been in where it's like almost the norm to be distracted and multitasking and operating on Slack at the same time that you're like in a one-on-one with someone, excuse me. And so how can you have any idea what's going on with yourself or give yourself presence with yourself, be present with someone else, and then, doing all these other things because it's such a rapid environment. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Emily, I'm a team of one. So my answer is very much so like inner. I definitely could work on self-regulation, but I also feel like we're seeing kind of just so many people in the workplace not being able to handle self-regulation in the same way we may have pretended to or actually been able to accomplish. And I think that's why we're seeing such high burnout as as an environment in society. People just can't self-regulate in the same ways right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, Diana. Nick, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think sometimes just be like I don't know what it is, if it's like just different. If it was different back in the day. But it feels that just being a manager, like in this culture, like being in a pandemic or coming out of a pandemic, whatever, however you want to like look at it, people are just like going through so much more like in the workplace and outside the workplace. And like, I think self-regulation is just really important, go off what Diana said, because like, you can be like socially aware and do social regulation, but that can take a toll on you as a leader. And I think like that's something that I just struggle with, because it's just like you take on so much because you need to care and your team wants someone to care and like listen to them. But then it just comes to a point where it's just like, come on, y'all, I'm like dying out here and need help too. Can we not keep revisiting this?
Yeah, it's a lot to have your antenna up to catch all those emotions of other people. 100%.
And I want to jump off of Nick, if I may. I love that. And then, so when you've got to take care of yourself and take a time out so that you can take care of yourself and and notice that you need a break, sharing that. So to send to your team that is something that we do here, that we encourage you to take care of yourself here. And me as your leader is going to do it. So it gives them permission to do the same. So I really appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah. Awesome. So every talk needs an inspirational quote. So here's mine. At the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel, which we've talked a lot about today. And so the biggest thing that you should take away from today is just how are you going to act to make sure that your team feels seen, heard, and valued? How do you create this space that they want to be a part of, that they're excited to contribute towards, that they want to be a part of and see that success and have it aligned to what they care about personally? So you did it. You made it through the presentation. So we covered a lot of ground today, but I want you all to write down one thing. What is one thing you are taking from our conversation? What is one thing that you are going to put into action in the next 30 days with your emotional intelligence? Again, we will send out that kind of cheat sheet so you can ask those questions for yourself, ask your team these questions, share this with your team. So you'll have some resources to take from today. But I want you all to write down what is one thing you're going to take from this conversation and put it into action the next 30 days. If you're looking for one, here is a phenomenal thing you can do. We are offering free EQ assessments. And so an EQ assessment is going to give you a report and kind of show you your score for each of the dimensions of emotional intelligence. But it also tells you personalized ways that you can increase your score in each of these sections. So we're going to put this link in the chat. And if you would like to take this assessment, it's only about 15 minutes long. Get this personalized report and it's completely free to you. So you can just sign up for that at choosetheperk.com. And then bonus, we are going to be selecting one person who takes this assessment. They're going to receive a free EQ workshop with their team. So go through similar conversations that we had today, but do it with your whole team. And this is going to be a virtual workshop, so you don't have to be in Madison or Wisconsin to do this. Any team can do it. And we are super excited to give somebody the space to learn about their team a little bit deeper, have the space to have these conversations and see how you can really have this common language and move your team forward. So again, sign up on our website. And we're super excited to work with one of your teams in this next year. And that is all that I have for you today. I know we have about 5 minutes left, and so I just want to open it up to anybody else for any questions or comments that you have about this. And I can answer it, or anybody else in the room can answer it, because I know we all have a lot of these things that we're dealing with in our jobs.
I have a question for Emily and Leah and Steph. Considering this is your realm and this is what you focus on and are really adept at, what kinds of things do you challenge yourself to be better at?
Oh, that is a
Great question.
I can dive in. So my lowest score is self-regulation. I'm really good at knowing what my emotions are and why I'm feeling them. I'm not the best at regulating them. And so that's one of the things that I'm really working on. And so Dan, my husband, he is high on self-regulation. So we are kind of opposites in that way. And so it's been really helpful because he was honest with me. He was like, just so you know, like sometimes you're a tornado, like you tear through, and he's like, you need to realize the wake that you leave behind you, because all of us, like, he's like, even though I'm regulating my emotions, like I feel just emotionally exhausted from the tornado that I was. This was a few months ago, and so we should check in with him if he thinks I've made progress. But so that's something that I'm really trying to work on, is regulating my emotions. And so really what I found works is helpful for me is taking walks and journaling. So when I have these like really high emotions come up, taking that time for myself to just kind of come back to that emotionally clear state. And again, I had to kind of test it out. So walks for me, and then journaling kind of brings me to a level where then I can have like a conversation and not just be like a tornado and leave people and things in my wake.
Steph, I don't know if you have anything to add, but I would say just kind of jumping off of Leah a little bit. Self-regulation is also my lowest score. And so that is what I'm really focusing on in, like, as I was been doing a lot more with EQ and learning more about it, just figuring out ways that I don't let that spill into everything in my day. I think that years ago, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, where you have a meeting in the morning that doesn't go well, and then instead of going back to your desk and working on something, you call a friend or you walk down the cubicle and you're talk about how the meeting went, and you're frustrated, and then you're complaining about it, and then you go to your next meeting and you're in a bad mindset. And so really making sure that I can kind of separate that so I can continue to be productive and work towards the goals that I had for that day.
And to round us all out, self-regulation is also my lowest score. So we've just got a whole bunch of low self-regulators on the PERK team. So when we found that out, we did, we've done these assessments and we did our own little workshop together as a team. And so that was just really eye-opening, honestly, for all of us, I think, to see that. Dan really holds the fort down when it comes to self-regulation. So, but kind of going off of what both Emily and Leah shared, I think it is trying to figure out what works well for you. Like Leah has journaling and taking walks, and Emily's trying to, separate those things. And for me, like meditation or doing our thought model that we teach to our clients, like just trying to get in the right mindset really helps me self-regulate a little bit more. And just even, I guess, like having self-awareness around my low self-regulation just really helps because it just kind of connected some things for me. And I think that also then helps you become better at having social awareness, social regulation. So kind of just being able to kind of have that holistic view of where you're at, I think just kind of helps with all the different areas too.
Emily, I really liked your analogy about the car heat and cool. I feel like I need to make like a long list for self-regulation of like, these are my heaters, these are my ACs, and like recognizing that and like putting some like weird imagery to it seems to sound like it'll help.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
100%.
Have you guys noticed at all that there's a correlation between women having a harder time with self-regulating and men doing a better job of it? Because you mentioned Dan is really good at self-regulating.
Yeah. So a question we get asked a lot when we do these workshops are not like specific like self-regulation, but do women tend to have higher scores in emotional intelligence? And no, the research is that like overall, like men and women have very comparable scores to their emotional intelligence, but it's specific dimensions within emotional intelligence that women tend to score higher on or men tend to score higher on. So I don't quote me on this. I do think that you are correct that self-regulation is one of those things that I think men tend to be higher on. But overall, it is very comparable with scores. There are other things that women score higher on.
But do men just score higher on it because they're lower self-awareness? So they rate themselves as better regular? No.
Solid.
All right. Any last minute thoughts or questions? I know we are at time for today.
Emily, who is the winner of emotional intelligence?
Everybody always asks, do I score the best of emotional intelligence? You're all winners. Can't wait to see all your scores for emotional intelligence and give you a sticker.
Thank you so much, Emily. This was
Thank you,
amazing.
Emily.
Unbelievable. Great
All
job.
crushed.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and we hopefully will see you all in January of next year. Woo! All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
Emily.
everyone.